Growing up, we moved around a lot. And as a child, every move meant that almost all of my toys and books were packed up. Like many kids left to use their imaginations, I became quite creative at what I considered to be a toy. Broken nails from a nail gun, they might be spaceships or sticks, and my mind would transform rocks to be cars or swords or whatever else I wanted it to be. At one point, when we were walking around a new to us house, I gasped out loud when I saw a mini rainbow on the ground. This looked like something out of my imagination, but it clearly existed in reality, a splash of rainbow color in the middle of the living room floor. When I pointed it out to my parents, they told me that it was the sun's light streaming through the window at just the right angle to hit a glass crystal on the chandelier in the dining room, to break into the colors that spilled on the floor below. Dad proved it to me by wiggling the chandelier a little bit, and the rainbow pattern, it moved right along with the light. You can bet that I used that bit of rainbow light as a part of my games for months down the line, anytime I saw it appear in the living room. You see, the light that we see in the world, whether from the sun or from a lamp, while it looks like it's white or yellow, is actually made up of lots of colors traveling together. In a vacuum, they travel indistinguishably from each other, but when the density around them changes, they are deflected from their path by differing amounts. It's this deflection pattern that we call a rainbow. And it turns out you can learn a lot from these patterns. For instance, different sources of light have different gaps in their spectrum. If you burn magnesium and look through a spectrometer, you'll see a different pattern of lights than if you burn sulfur or hydrogen or anything else for that matter. Astronomers use this to tell what stuff distant stars are made of. When their light is refracted into a spectrum, the strength of the colors and the gaps between them help identify what elements are present, and thus what type of star it is. Our sun, for instance, burns brightly by fusing hydrogen into helium. And while helium is fairly common to find today, before pockets of helium were found in Texas, one of the only places it could be found was the sun. While the details of how light splits through crystal prisms were first written down by Newton, and the atomic makeup of stars was far into their future, the ancient world certainly had a basic understanding that light bent while traveling through other stuff. Spearfishing, especially, it just depends on this knowledge. You don't stab at where the fish appears to be, but where the fish actually is, based on the bending of light through the water. Folks who spent time on the water also noticed that certain crystals would form when seawater was left in pools to evaporate. Semi-transparent salt crystals, which could almost be a full rainbow of color in their own right, depending on what else was mixed in with them. Kind of like this one here. And these crystals, as well as semi-precious stones, loosed from their stony prison, would glow with an inner light when held before a strong light source, or in this case, within it. Given Jesus' strong association with fisherfolk, at least 4 of his disciples originally made their living by fishing. Both salt and light would be familiar images with his followers. Because of the incredible saltiness of the Dead Sea, Israel was filled with salt crystals, large and small, and in the ancient world, salt was precious and valuable. While we think very little of salt, to the ancient Romans it was used in place of gold, to the point that many Romans were paid in salt crystals as their medium of exchange. That's the origin of our word salary. Salt, you see, was not just used to preserve meat and fish, like we do today, but when used properly, it worked as a fertilizer for the fields. Most salt produced from seas around the world is about 80% sodium chloride, or table salt, as we call it. But salt from the Dead Sea is only about 30% sodium chloride. The rest is made up of compounds containing potassium, magnesium, calcium, 3 very essential parts of modern fertilizer. When Dead Sea salt was spread on fields, especially when combined with nitrogen-rich organic fertilizers from animals, it helped the fields grow. and grow bigger vegetables and have fewer weeds. Salt was not just about flavor, not just about preserving. It also was known to make things flourish and grow big and strong. When Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth," a valid understanding is, you are the salt of the soil. You help things grow just like salt does. Yet he uses these images not as a future tense, one day you will be salt and light, but in the already accomplished sense of you are the salt, you are the light. You already glow with the light of God, like a hilltop beacon to God's love. You already are a preserving, nurturing presence, the salt of the Spirit poured out on the earth to bring growth and healing. Then Jesus pulls an Aramaic pun. He says, if the salt has lost its taste, how could the saltiness be restored? Now, the Greek of this line is really confusing. It reads, if the salt had become foolish, how can it be salt? But in Aramaic, tabel is one word for salt, and topple means foolish. If the salt becomes silly, is it salt? That might be a dynamic translation of this pun that sort of works in English. Similarly, there's a bit of extra meaning when Jesus tells his followers, you are the light of the world. The word Matthew uses for world is cosmos, which means the natural order of the world rather than the soil. It has a shade of meaning, beautiful, everything in order, well cared for. You are the beautiful light of order. You are the nurturing, healing salt. If you stop being what you are made to be, you stop living into what God has called you to be. If your spectrum were analyzed, would it match your words? Are you indeed shining with the light of God, the light of order? Or have you fallen prey to the common trouble of both light and salt, that if a little is good, then a lot must be amazing? Remember who the audience is that Jesus is addressing. The oppressed people in Galilee, in Nazareth, in the surrounding regions of Israel, who must be feeling downtrodden. To them, Jesus is saying, you are already enough. God sees the good you do even while being oppressed. But when the people take things too far, it goes poorly. As Debbie Thomas points out, salt fails when it dominates. Instead of eliciting goodness, it destroys the rich potential all around it. This is not what Jesus ever intended when he called us the salt of the earth. Our preciousness was never meant to make us proud and self-righteous. It was meant to humble and awe us. This tendency of humanity to go too far, to not realize what we're called to do, it's nothing new, but it stings all the worse for it. The book of Isaiah warns against a self-righteous showing of piety without helping others. The people recently returned to their home after generations of exile are complaining. Why do we fast, but you do not see? Why humble ourselves, but you do not notice? God responds to these complaints. Look, you serve your own interest on your fast day and oppress all your workers. Is this not the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. It's not in the public showing of piety, but through doing God's work in the world that healing and restoration come. If you offer your food to the hungry, Isaiah continues, and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. By helping each other, you shine with the light of God, and God's presence will be with you. Healing comes when we care for each other. In community, we are guided by God, nourished and healed by the waters we share with each other. So, I pray that we would be filled with the light of God. Like a crystal of salt, may we glow brightly, but gently. When we gather in community, may we refract God's light into a whole spectrum, being the rainbow of Christ, each healing and filling the spaces in the spectrum left by each other. And let us not use power and piety to score points, but genuinely humble ourselves and help each other in times of need. Amen.